Welcome to another episode of Are You Mad at Me? I'm Vickie Morgan.
And I'm Josh Morgan.
And we're so glad you're here. We got a spot here on the couch for you to curl up next to Sparky's with us today.
We got the Sparky here.
Thanks for coming back. We've got a lot of episodes now. This is pretty fun.
This is a dozen. You said it last week, but this is a dozen.
An actual dozen or a baker dozen?
Actual dozen, American Imperial
12.
dozen.
12. Okay, I gotcha. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Happy to hear. You got stuff you want to talk about today? Or we're
Nothing.
just going to wing it?
Nothing.
I'm just going
to sit here and stare adoringly at you.
I like that.
Just listen to every.
I think there's a lot of people that went, yeah, that's about right. That's how she likes it.
That sounds right.
Okay, so off the top, I'm gonna get to our Nateland portion of the podcast immediately because this is a heavy one.
Because we just came downstairs from watching the Nateland podcast.
Also, because I was up late a couple nights ago and I was watching an episode where sometimes if it's a little bit slow, and there's only been a couple of them, but I'll look at the comments. Like if you're asleep, I'll just
read through the comments. On the podcast.
While I'm at it. And sometimes it kind of gives away what's going to happen later in the podcast, and I don't love that. But I saw an episode the other day that really threw me. There was a guest on, and I don't want to say which episode because I don't want people to go look up that one.
Just a guest.
It was a guest that I didn't care for. I got to say, it was like, ugh, oh my God, how long is this episode? And I love Nate. I love Nate so much. And so, but the comments, like you could tell every single comment was a fan of the guest who had come over.
So the guest had come on and had his own fans, and those fans had come to listen to this
listen to him, and we're expecting
episode.
Him to just he's quite filthy and whatever, over the top, I don't know, whatever. He's not my. He's certainly not my cup of tea. So he was nice enough, but I just didn't find him that interesting. But it was probably fine. When I looked through the comments, they were just. There was a few hundred comments, and they were just ripping Nate. And I got to say, I don't know if I want to live in a world where people don't like Nate Bargatze. Bargatze. Because, I just don't know what would be your problem. Like, I know some people would say, like, oh, he just takes a long time to get to a punchline, or the way he talks is really slow. And it's like, yeah, why are you in a rush? Where do you need to be that you need your jokes to be bam, bam, bam? Like, go get Mitch Hedberg one-liners if you want fast jokes. But, like, if you want soothing comedy that's actually, like, has some heart and
like a warm
kindness,
bowl of chicken soup.
Oh, he's all that. And he's like the bowl of ice cream afterwards and the apple pie a la mode. He's just, how could you not like Nate? Anyway, I didn't care for the comments on the episode. I'm just going to pretend that didn't happen.
I got to say, we haven't had any guests bring any negative comments on our podcast so far.
Also, we've had 0 guests, so that's probably why. Are we going to do guests?
I
this.
think I saw something on a podcasting page on Facebook the other day about people that charge their guests to come on their podcast.
Ew.
Somebody was like, does everybody charge their guests? And I guess that's the idea of, like, it's marketing for the guests. Like, you should be paying for me to promote your whatever you're doing. But a lot of people are like, no.
Yeah.
it's promotion. I think it's a cool, like, in that sense, it's like a promotion for both. Like when you have somebody like that Nateland podcast that you were watching, the guest brought all of his fans. Yeah, so that's promotion for Nateland, but also
we didn't need them. They can stay where they are.
But also Nateland gets
and it was pretty low numbers on the podcast, which was also kind of surprising. So I don't know if more people were, I don't know. But anyway, I didn't care for
didn't care for it.
It was comment after comment, like this guy's just saying he was a bad interviewer and that he was taken, and it was like, yeah, it's called Nateland.
He's not an interviewer.
People are tuning into this because they want to see Nate Bargatze.
Like not Barbara Walters.
Yeah. It was just, and it was supposed to be so lighthearted, and it is, and it was, but I was just like, all the commenters are like, be on your way, toddle on now, pop off. What does they say in England?
Off you pop.
Off you pop. Yeah, it was disturbing because didn't care for that. Gotta say. Anyway, back to regular.
We go on to the next.
We went on to the next one. It was
episode,
just right back to normal.
And then the life just continues on, and we just enjoy Nateland.
Oh, love Nateland, and so it's really funny to hear. I've said this before, but it's really funny to hear things that he wants to do. And we're still back a couple of years, so we're still at we're not even up to 100 episodes yet.
Yeah, they're still in 2021.
We're up to Halloween-ish time around the second.
They're still talking about COVID.
Yeah, they're everything has opened up again, but you know what? I gotta be totally honest. I miss the pandemic.
So right now, currently in our town where we reside, there's a blizzard happening outside.
Yeah.
And for the past couple of days, they've been like, there's a blizzard coming. It's going to start today. And then nothing happened. And then it's going to start today, the next day, and nothing happened. But then today, like the snow was really, it's like, I just went outside because there was a banging outside the house. And I realized it was our garbage bin lid banging on the side of the house. So I went outside just for as long as it takes to walk around the corner and turn the garbage can around. And it was like, I almost blew away. And I'm not very slight. I'm a hefty individual. I'm husky.
Catch a good gust though, and you're gone.
But it was
so it's our first storm of the winter.
The point is this is before COVID started here in St. John's. We had Snowmageddon like 3 months before the shutdowns, 2 months even.
Yeah,
and
state of emergency for a few days.
For like almost a week, we were like just in the house. Couldn't go anywhere. No buses or cars or anything was moving. Everything was closed, and then COVID happened, and we're like, oh, we'll just go back in the house. Yeah. Like everything's. So anyway, that's kind of what it feels like today, because it's like the boys are like, what are we going to do? Like nothing.
Yeah. I miss lockdowns. I miss the times when there was like no FOMO. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. And now it's right back to just people were nice to each other for a little while there, and everybody's gone right back
Everything
to normal.
was so like hopeful. It was like, we can make a change. We can do things differently now. When this is over, we're going to continue. Like it
was like everybody forgot about it.
The waters were clearing and polluted rivers, and it was like, we can do better. And then now it's like, oh, we're so glad we're back to like smoking and polluting and
what was it?
I got 3 cigarettes going, and I'm throwing plastic bottles into the ocean.
It's very specific.
Yeah, I don't know. Smoking isn't.
I don't know. I just feel like there's so like you're just bombarded with this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. You're missing it, and it's like, oh my god, give me what is it Nate says about books? I'm trying to get my head above water. I just feel like I'm missing so much, and I don't know if it's just housebound wintertime kind of blues or whatever, but I just miss. When you're like, well, I just feel like everybody's taking each other for granted again.
Yeah, it's back to the grind, which is like bull to begin with.
I don't know if it's even a little bit worse than it was before the pandemic.
Yeah, we have to make it up for lost time.
Okay, so I don't. This is totally unrelated, except it's 100% related. I have a question about working in a restaurant. First of all, I realized this past weekend I would not last as a server
in a restaurant.
Not for, I think I've told a story on the podcast before. There was a very brief period where I was working for a theater company, like a dinner theater company. And the plan was to work a few shifts over Christmas and then maybe like do a show or, maybe do some marketing for them and stuff. I think I talked about that before. And there was one night where I was serving food and all the plates were put out. It was like an assembly line, which I thought was pretty efficient.
Wasn't really like a wait staff situation.
Not
you
quite.
Just were bringing out food.
This is about all I could stand.
It was all one dish.
So first of all, in the kitchen, instead of like the chef putting out all the food, it was like stations. So there'd be one person putting out the meat or the protein, and then there'd be someone else putting on the vegetables, and then someone else. And then that looked all great to me. Like the dishes were clean, all the food prep was clean. But then like one of the owners came in and she was like, "Why are you just standing there?" And she was like grabbing handfuls of the garnish and like throwing it on a plate. And I was like, I watched you just walk in off the street and you didn't wash your hands. So I was like, it was ruined for me.
Yeah.
And then, so going to people's tables and going, you got everything. Like if people are at our house and we're serving them, I'm like, I'll go to the kitchen 1,000 times. But there's a few things about the serving part of it that's like, you might get to eat maybe, and your food is probably cold, and you're eating it over the trash like a rat.
Did you as a server?
Back. Yeah, I didn't care for that kind of thing, because you're not sharing a meal. Like if we're eating at our house, we're sharing, and I don't mind whatever people.
And when
need.
people come over and you're serving guests in your house, they're like grateful. They're like, "Oh no, please, I couldn't." But at a restaurant, they're like, "Hello." So
I've never worked in a restaurant. I've never even applied to work as a server. I don't know. It seems like a really hard, complicated job.
Right when I was in like my last year in high school, and then when I first got out of high school, after, like the fall after I graduated, before I went to basic training, I worked at a few restaurants. Never as a server. I worked in the kitchen, and I was at one place. I was a porter, which was
for dishes.
No, dishes? I did dishes at one place. I worked in the kitchen. I did dishes. We had like a salad and sandwich station, and I just basically made salads and sandwiches the whole shift.
Oh.
But at one place, I worked as a porter, which was basically like sort of in between the bus boy and the wait staff. Like I would just refill all the stations that the wait staff would use around the restaurant. They'd have like a station full of like lemon wedges and napkins and water pitchers, and like my job was to just go around and I would cut up chives in the morning, like prep time in the mornings and stuff. Yeah. So like I'll never like serve. I never like.
So I've done that job.
Tables.
I worked at in the hospital in Maine. In Portland, Maine.
Yeah,
I did prep, and I kept the salad bar topped up and filled, coffee machines and things like that. And I've done coffee. I actually worked in coffee shops, but the idea of going to a restaurant where you're coming up to the table while people have their mouths full and going, do you need anything? And someone's going with their mouth totally full. Yeah, I don't have any ketchup, or I need whatever. And like I got to run all the way back to the kitchen to get that thing for them. I think I'd be throwing range bottles at people. I couldn't handle it. It's a very hard job, and I don't ever. I mean. I've never had any interest.
What you're saying is you don't envy wait staff.
Not at all. I think it's a very difficult job. So I do have a question, though, related to that. So when you go to a restaurant, sometimes I've had friends who work as servers, and there's a lot of talk about, is it kickback? Like when there's tips that everybody pools, and it's shared with the kitchen staff?
Yeah, that's what the restaurant O'Charlie's, where I was a porter, that's how it worked. We had a tip pool. So like I was like myself, the bussers, the people that would clean the tables, and then like I think the kitchen staff too, they would like all the servers would put all their tips into a pool. I don't know if the kitchen staff was involved in that, but anyway, everybody that was out on the floor.
That's a sticking point. Is like when the kitchen staff. So tell me what's the mentality there? Like how does that gel in a staff room where everybody, like the people are out front facing, putting up with the garbage, treatment by the customers? How does that translate to the guy that's in the back? No offense, just cutting the lemons and cutting the chives. Like how does that translate to the people on the front line who are taking the abuse, to the people who are just dealing with vegetables?
So I was 17. So I was very much self-centered and not thinking about anybody else at the time. Like I was just very, young.
But you were getting to share the tips.
But I was getting to share the tips, and I was like, cool, I just got extra money.
So you've never been on the other end of it where you're at the table
I was sharing. Yeah. And the other thing is, this was in North Carolina. So wait staff would make like $2.30 an hour. Yeah. This was like,
and so your wages
you didn't make minimum wage. They just assumed that you would be topped up past minimum wage by tips, which... Yeah, I can see that would be a frustrating thing as a server to be like, I'm not making enough money without these tips. Here's some of my tips.
Yeah. It feels like the real hard work is up front, being nice to people that are just demanding everything. And I mean, it's all hard work.
It's all hard work, but yeah, you're getting tips because you're doing.
And what's it called? Is it kickback?
Just a tip
throwback?
pool. I don't know what word you're looking for, but I never heard
there's something about that.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a word. I just don't know it.
So in Canada, I mean, I know in Newfoundland, people get minimum wage. So you're getting $15 an hour to stand at a table side, and if the tips are coming in,
at least, right? Like, isn't there more than minimum wage sometimes?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, I think there was one restaurant that decided they were going to cut out tipping, and they gave more.
Was that here?
Yeah, there was more of a higher wage, but it was also the same person who was the head of some group that was going against raising minimum wage.
Okay.
Which is kind of comical because I don't know. Anyway, so my question is, I'm leading you down the garden path a little bit here. So what would happen like if we went to a restaurant and we had a really nice server, let's call her Allie Poo Poo is her name. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know.
All right.
Dingleberry.
Just a name. Just a regular name would be fine. Just come up with a human name.
Let's call her Ashley. So let's say Ashley is coming to serve our table, and she's doing a really good job, and the boys are loving her, and she's paying lots of attention to us, and she's great, and she's running back and forth to the kitchen a bunch of times. And she says, it's my birthday today. I don't know why she sounds like that, but... I understand when there's like a tip pool where like stuff is left on the table, the busser comes out, cleans the table, the tips are put in a jar, and everybody shares it. Like I understand that part. But what would happen if we were at a restaurant and we were like, went up to the cashier and said, I want to give $20 to Amber because it's her birthday today. What would happen? Or if we gave it directly to Amber and she put it in her pocket, I mean, she'd be in a heap of trouble.
Yeah, I don't really know how that works.
You're not allowed to take direct tips, right?
Well, I don't know, because you take the tips off the table if it was cash, but then sometimes people tip with a card, and that goes through the whole POS system and all that stuff.
But I feel like there's an honor system where it all goes in a jar or in a pool.
Yeah.
And if someone put something in their pocket, they meant specifically for me. Like, well, but if that mentality happens, it feels like the whole thing falls apart because everybody's sharing. We're all working together, front end, back end. Everybody's working together to provide a certain service level, and the tips are shared. So it feels like if you were to try to slip a $50 bill to a particular server,
outside of the tipping scheme for something specific, like their birthday.
It wouldn't be okay, right? So, like, what would happen if I went back to a kitchen and was like, I just talked to Amber out front. Turns out you guys share tips. I want her to get that $50 I left. What would happen? Do you think anybody would do it, or do you think they would laugh me out of the building?
They would laugh at you and say, "That's not how we do things."
Right.
This is tips.
I mean, if you came in with a card, if you went and got a birthday card over at Dollarama and passed it to Amber with $50 in it,
that's
she
a
could
different
keep
thing.
it. But I feel like when you put it into the system, I'm not asking these questions for any particular reason.
This doesn't have any basis in your current life or anything like that. That's fine. This is Vickie, I gotta say, we've been together for coming up on 19 years this summer. Since that we've known each other, and Vickie is the queen of metaphors.
Oh,
you are. I think that's how you work things out in your head. Like, I'm gonna assign this feeling that I have to another situation to see if it would work, and maybe we'll try another one. And sometimes I have to try the gerbil on the wheel in my brain is just like dying, trying to figure out how to tie this metaphor back to our life. And I'm sure it works. It's just,
in my head,
my gerbil's a little slow sometimes.
So yeah, I feel like I've had a few friends like that along the way that are like, what are you talking about? What are you getting at?
Sometimes I have to say, okay, bring it back.
Yeah.
Bring it back to real life, because I'm losing my train's
and
going
so
off
I'm gonna do a little comparison here. I have a metaphor to explain this. But someone in my life talks in movie metaphors. And TV shows. So
I'm sure that's equally frustrating. I don't find it frustrating. I just sometimes lose the conversation.
No, not frustrating, because if you've seen the same movies, it's like, boom, I got it.
Exactly.
Remember how we felt when we watched the first episode or the second half of season 5 of Yellowstone? Boom. Are you okay? That's where you would know immediately if I said, remember that episode? Josh would go, are you okay? Do you need somebody? Do you need some help? Because please, I know we talked about Yellowstone in the last episode. Stop halfway through season 5. Don't watch the second half. It's not worth it.
No spoilies.
It's not worth it. Don't. I can't even. Anyway, when you have the same reference points, it's easy to communicate that way. Yeah. And I feel like if there's a psychologist or a psychiatrist or I don't know, who are those people? Those people that diagnose people, doctors and whatnot.
Diagnosticians.
We probably just diagnosed each other on the air with what we have. And it's something about storytelling. There's something about framing.
I think you're a fantastic writer, and that comes across in your conversation skills, that you're constantly making connections to other things, which is I think that works in writing.
So sometimes I feel like I bore people. Like stay with me.
So that feeling that you're getting, that glazed over look in people's eyes, is not because they're bored. I think sometimes they just lost the connection of how does this come back to real life?
I said something a while ago to somebody, and I was like, he knows her in the biblical sense. And the guy was like, what?
What?
Like, in the Bible when they were like procreating humankind. Anyway, he was like, okay, gotcha. And then we moved on. But it's kind of funny to stop and go, oh, God, it's a good thing you're so cute. And explaining, I feel like I said touchstone to the same person one time. And he was like, what does that mean? Like, when you're swimming, I don't swim, but when you're swimming and you kind of touch, you touch the ground.
Is that where that comes from? Touchstone?
I think so. I don't know sometimes. It just
really interesting.
It just comes into my brain and it's like, is this even real? Is that what a touchstone is?
But that's what it means for you. So maybe that works for you and your thought process.
And I don't know where it comes from. I'm
really interested because
oh my God, he's looking up touchstone.
I'm interested.
I think I might have looked it up afterwards because he was like, what's that now? And I was like, when you're swimming in the ocean and you want to make sure that the you don't know how deep the water is, so you just go down and touch the bottom.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It's just to know where you are. It's just to get your bearings. But I've never seen that used in that context, but it was like when it just flew out of my mouth and I was like, this is my touchstone. It's like, what? Like, isn't that a thing?
I'm Googling it. I'm looking at the etymology.
So this is how we communicate.
Of touchstone.
So Josh with the background in linguistics.
This is really funny because I see this on TikTok every now and then. When somebody, there's some pawn shops that'll buy jewelry and they'll do these body cams so you can't see anybody's faces. You just hear the people passing over and they're usually not reputable people. They'll be like, what can I get for this chain? And the person's like, it's either stolen or it's fake or whatever. And the person will be like, I want $5,000 for this. And the person will rub it on a rock or a little stone thing.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, "This is fake. I'll give you $100."
Is that a touchstone?
That's a touchstone. It's a.
I've been using it wrong.
You rub gold or silver, and you compare the streak that's left to little thin strips or bars of known. Anyway, it's just to compare.
Give me a second.
I like your.
I can connect
your
this. So if you want to see if something is real, it's the same as if you wanted to touch down to see what your basis is. Like, how far am I from the bottom? How much room do I have to? If I'm and I don't swim, it terrifies me. But if I want to know how deep the water is that I'm in, and I want to know where the ground is beneath me, I would think I would use that phrase. I would say touchstone in that case.
We just learned something new. This is the learn something new segment of Are You Mad at Me?
Yeah. So why are we talking about that?
Sorry. We were talking about
Vickie uses metaphors. And so Josh uses TV and movie quotes. And it means, like, I feel like you're a very sensitive person. And you're very kind and compassionate. And sometimes I don't think you or I have the language to say, I feel embarrassed, or I feel humiliated, or I'm angry, or I want to... whatever. Like sometimes
drive my car into a bridge embankment.
Exactly that. Like when they're in the restaurant in Tommy Boy and he's saying, "Flo, is that your name? Listen, how about you go back there and turn on the fryer and make me some wings?" Like, I get that sometimes I'll say something like that to you.
I'm stuck in Tommy Boy now.
Yeah. Or like, I saw shrimp in there. It looks like you had a big Thanksgiving dinner. Like, I'm about to eat something that has a big strip of shrimp poop in it. Like, that's... Again, speaking in metaphors, like I think there's something about we have a couple of friends who are special ed teachers, and they talk about how kids need, it's called, I think, narratives. They need narratives. Like, if something's going to change in their day where they're used to a certain schedule, if something's going to change, they need a narrative to adjust. And I feel like, maybe I've been floating around for the last 47 years with
social stories. Was that it?
Social stories, with a condition that maybe has hindered me in my interactions with people. Again, I'm going to go back to Yellowstone. Man, what a great show, mostly. And I was so invested. And I actually found some cowboy boots. We did clean out most of the house. Everything is absolutely gutted.
We've been going through and decluttering.
And I found some cowboy boots. I found 2 pairs of cowboy boots.
What a enormous pile of donation stuff we have in our hallways, upstairs, downstairs. We have bags. So that was really cool because we've been getting, as everybody knows, we've been getting Instacart since our car has been broken down. And pretty much every time you get Instacart from Costco, they get these big, heavy-duty, like, fruit boxes. The great big heavy cardboard boxes, and they, load your stuff in because they don't have bags or whatever. So we've had these like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, like they just stack up in the basement, these great big heavy duty. And even like on recycling day, it's like, they're so hard to break down. Like, I got to put my boots on and just smash them and stuff. So we've been going through and decluttering the house and using up all the Costco heavy duty cardboard boxes. So now it's just a matter of finding somebody that'll bring a truck over here and drive us over to Value Village. And
one of the pitfalls of not having a car. So our options are, we can walk to U-Haul, rent a pickup, come back.
Which that's not a bad option. Today it would be a bad option because it's
so snowy. So let's wait till all the snow melts before we do that. But there's not a lot of room in the
also people
hallway.
you can call and pay, like, that'll take stuff to the dump for you.
What's Buddy called? I haul, you call?
You call, I haul.
Yeah, okay.
So this is sponsored by, no, I'm just kidding.
It's not.
That's just somebody local that has a truck that...
You should have mentioned the podcast. Maybe we could have got that.
Oh, man, we should barter.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Bartering's a great thing. I love that.
But then there's hopefully the other option is finding a friend that's just, doesn't have anything to do on Tuesday and wants to come over to your house and...
I don't know. I kind of like the idea of renting a car for just a day, just to go out and do all the stuff that, the little tiny things, little things like going to Michael's. I haven't been to Michael's in months, so I'm just going through my yarn stash and I'm getting.
Well, we do have to go to Costco and renew our membership soon, so maybe we'll do that. We'll rent a vehicle and drive out to Mount Pearl and go to Costco.
I miss Mount Pearl. We used to go to Costco at least twice a week.
I know.
And I do miss that, but I don't miss the car insurance and the gas and the, driving conditions and all that stuff. Like, I don't mind. I don't miss, but every now and then there'll be something that's like, oh man, we could have really used the car. Like when it's especially cold and we're walking with the boys and
they're miserable.
We're like, they're miserable. And it's like, boys, I don't have anything reassuring to tell you. This sucks.
Yeah.
But, if the winter's,
in a
we're
couple
half
months,
over.
In a couple months, it'll be like
Yeah.
Let's go outside.
And it's the boots. Like I feel like the heavy boots are and the heavy clothes and the wind cutting your face off, and it's the lifting your feet with, like, when I'm out in sneakers, I'm like Richard Simmons.
Just
really.
going.
Just go. Like, come on, let's do this. But like when we're out in winter boots, it's like, you know what? You're right. This stinks. But it's just for a little while longer.
We were chatting about getting a U-Haul the other day when we were trying to figure out what to do with all the donation stuff in our house. And I didn't realize, like, because our car has been broken down since November. In December, on my birthday, my license expired. So I was like, even if we go rent a U-Haul, I can't drive it. So I don't have a driver's license. So luckily, you can go online and do that. So
you can do it online. There's so much stuff you can do online. So we're going to try to find a GPS system, like, you know, those little things that you punch in.
Like an old school vehicle.
Yeah, but an up-to-date one with maps, because we need one of those.
They still make them.
Yeah. So if anyone has a GPS that's kicking around, because I know most newer cars have them.
We have someone that could use one in our family. Yeah. It's not for us just to walk around holding a GPS.
No, there's an aging population of people who, there's lots of new highways and lots of new roads, and they're pretty hard to navigate, even for young whippersnappers like ourselves. And so we have some elderly folks who could really benefit from those.
Who don't use smartphones.
So and so we need to just keep on top of, you know, changing, evolving needs, and so we're looking for a GPS, and we need to find a GPS that somebody can drop off to us, which is kind of I get that we're a pain in the ass right now.
I found a really great one on Marketplace the other day, and it was super cheap, and the lady, I was like, I can meet you at the mall because it's pretty close to our house, and she's like, no, pick up only. Like, you don't ever leave your house, lady. Like, this isn't like. At some point, you're going to go out, and you can just bring it with you, and I'll give you some money, and you give me the thing.
Yeah. It's hard to picture this for us right now, because I feel like when somebody asks us to do something like that, we're like at your doorstep. It's like, it's hard to, like, I promise when we have a car, we're very, you know, we're contributing members of society. We're just leeches right now.
Just today.
And currently. It's just, so it's funny, the stuff that's in our hallway right now to be dropped off, that was all stuff that were so necessary
at the time,
and it's taken up so much space in our life.
So I think if we had been at a store or a yard sale or a thrift store or something and seen the great big pile of stuff that we currently are donating all at once, and somebody was like, "Here, you can take all this stuff. Give us some money, and we'll give you all this stuff," we'd be like, "We're not going to take all that stuff to our house." But we're like buying everything one little piece at a time, and eventually it's like, I can't see any of my clothes in the closet because we've got so much stuff in there, or. You know, the dishes in the kitchen.
There's a good metaphor there. I think mentally that's what we do, is we let people chip away at us a little tiny bit, and it's like, that doesn't take up much space. And then you let one more person
that's really good.
do a little tiny thing. And all of a sudden you got all this bullshit in your head clogging up your brain, and you're like, why can't I sleep? And I was like, oh, because all these transgressions and all these like little microaggressions are like, I should have told that person to shut up. Or get out of my face, or I should have turned around and walked in the opposite direction. But like, you let the little things chip away, and it takes up space.
Such a good metaphor. You did good, honey.
Yeah. So I'm not going minimalist or anything like that, but I think all that stuff, like we should post a picture of what our hallway looks like, because it is hallway all the way up over the stairs.
I do have pictures on my phone because I sent them to the hall guy.
And how'd you find him?
Oh, he was super nice.
No, how'd you find him?
How did I find him?
Find is in search.
I think I searched on Facebook a guy with a truck, and it turned out. Oh, yeah. So it turns out there's a guy on Facebook locally that's just called a guy with a truck. Yeah. But he doesn't haul stuff. I mean, he might, but the whole description was, it's like a handyman. Oh. A guy with a truck, and he should say like a guy with tools.
Wasn't there somebody else we knew that started a company called like your husband broke or something like that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway. The great business ideas, and we just needed this one time, because after we get all this clutter, we're probably never bringing more clutter into the house.
So what we've been doing, maybe this will help somebody. Maybe somebody has a very cluttered house and is feeling this pressure of all the stuff in their house. We're going one room at a time, even one section of a room at a time, because I think we did this in the kitchen.
Sections, yeah.
We took everything out of the cabinets. We put it we put it on the coffee table, the dinner table, got a folding table, put everything out. So the cabinets were completely empty, had everything from the cabinets laid out so we could see it. And then all four of us and the boys, went through and just picked out stuff that felt really good.
And the key for me was, after you clear up the cupboard, enjoy the space. Like, just look at how much empty space you have and just enjoy it. And then honor what you're going to put back that you're going to allow to take up space.
So we did that. I think
no garbage. Like, if it doesn't feel good and bring you joy, It doesn't belong in your cupboard. It doesn't get to take up space.
And I feel like we talked about this, the kitchen already, because we did this a couple weeks ago. But the bedroom was similar. We put all the clothes from the closet and the drawers and everything out on the bed, which was super stressful because it was like, oh, if we want to go to sleep, we can't because there's this giant pile of stuff on our bed.
And the beagles got up and started burrowing through.
The dogs were digging through.
Yeah, it was hard.
So then we just put back what we really like.
Yep.
And then we ended up with like 3 bags of donations.
3 bags of clothes and 2 bags of shoes and
crazy
a whole
amounts.
bunch of other stuff. Yeah.
So it really helped to go room by room and just put in the stuff that we love and feels good to own. Like we want to,
After it was all done, like after all the bags were in the hallway and we couldn't move it ourselves, was like, I need this out of the house now. And I felt like asking the universe, like, are you mad at me? Like, I just did this thing that, should feel great, and yet I can't walk down the hallway. And I felt like the world was mad at me for a moment. So just, lots of emotions. You're unpacking a lot of stuff, and that's to be expected too. Like it's, unpacking all that stuff with all the dust and all the memories and, I went
through the boys' clothes. And it was funny because we had stuff that fits, stuff that doesn't fit, and stuff that fits, but I don't want to wear it anymore. Yeah. So it's like, because, the boys have...
It's itchy or...
Yeah, stuff that you bought and it turned out to not be great. But so the boys are not only, they have the 2 piles of stuff that I want and stuff that I don't want, but also the stuff that they've grown out of. So it was a lot for the boys of trying on shirts, jackets, pants.
And they've been growing real fast.
They were so accommodating and like... Try this on. Okay, now try this on. Okay, now try this on.
And so I also passed this off to Josh because going through the boys' clothes has always been very hard because I get very sentimental about, they don't fit in this anymore. Maybe we could put it on a teddy bear that they still have. And I really, there's some stuff that, is so heartbreaking to know that they're never... I mean, I know we're very lucky that they're growing into new clothes. And I'm enjoying that because now they're basically fitting into your stuff, which is really cute because they're huge. They're both very big, tall, healthy dudes. But it's really sad sometimes to see the little shirts that they're never going to... And I still have bags of clothes. I'm never getting rid of that. I still have a bin of Thomas trains that is never... I'll take that to my grave. Burn it with me. Mm-hmm. Cremate it with me.
Or like a Viking funeral on a boat with a fire. And
that's not bad either.
Belongings.
Yeah.
And the dogs.
But there's some stuff that no, you can keep the dogs. If I'm gone, you can keep the dogs alive. But it there was some things they're never going anywhere because those trains are such good memories. And that was...
I came across, I don't know if you know this or not. I was in Google Drive the other day clearing out something and I saw there's a folder in my Google Drive that's just called Trains or Thomas Trains or whatever. And years ago, when we still lived in Maine, we apparently took all the trains out, laid them all out, literally covered the floor in one of the rooms, lined them all up in sections of these are the wooden trains, these are the metal trains. Oh. There was another show that was similar to Thomas, but it was kind of a futuristic sci-fi train show.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember the name of it, but we had a whole bunch of those trains. And so I found this folder full of photos of all of the trains. There's hundreds.
Way.
And then all the wooden tracks and all the plastic tracks and just bins, anyway.
Were we going to sell it? Maybe?
I think we were talking about selling it. So we had taken them all out to take pictures of them.
You know what? I think there was a point where somebody offered me a few $100s one time for the thing. And I was like, it was on The Office when they were having that yard sale and they wouldn't let the price, they couldn't come up with a price high enough because it had sentimental value. So I think I got there.
How far along, how much further ahead would we be in life right now if you had taken that few $100s? I would have invested it. I would have invested in Apple back in the 70s.
Yeah.
We would be millionaires.
I would have bought Milano Blahniks shoes.
Milano Blahniks. I think those are cookies.
I think they're cookie shoes. Which doesn't that sound delicious?
Chocolate
I love
shoes.
That. Anyway, it's been an interesting week. So we got a blizzard going on. We were going to talk about that. I'm probably going to be out of school tomorrow, I would imagine.
We had some Christmas and birthday cards come for the boys. Their birthdays were in January and Christmas obviously was December. So there was a postal strike going on all of December. Part of January.
Oh, thanks to Blaine and Kim for the Christmas card.
Yeah, there was also some coming for us. So people from North Carolina, Tennessee, Arizona, there was several cards coming here from the U.S. and we're still getting them. The boys got a birthday card for one of them and there's two. So one of the other one's somewhere in the postal. It probably might be in the mailbox now, but we're still. It's mid-February and February.
What was it? Peter called it on the. He printed out a calendar. They made a calendar, and Peter said, "Call it Zebraary." You know, like zebra and February, and you jam them together. Says the horse, and like this sounds so ridiculous. But Peter might be the funniest kid I've ever met in my life.
He's very random.
He is the funniest 11-year-old on the planet. Henry's hilarious also, but they are the two of them have the deadpan humor that just busts me. It just every now and then they'll say stuff like I came across a folder on my phone today, and it was like Peterisms, and it was hey Peter, do you think the orphanage is open today? And he was like, I don't know, Mom, is the home open today? And he's so quick. I love it.
I think we were talking about this last week, but we've been trying to watch movies together, like as a family. Yeah. And we watched Paddington I don't know why, but Peter, he's 11. So he's young, but they seem very much older because of their size or I don't know, because we're with them all the time. But anyway, Peter wanted to watch Paddington, the original Paddington movie from 10 years ago or whatever. Yeah. And we were like, okay, like I thought he was joking. Like I thought it was like an ironic thing.
There was a point where
we watched the whole movie, and they were both the 11-year-old and the 14-year-old, both like staring at it, loving it, like laughing.
There was a point where Henry laughed at it, and Peter goes, "Oh my God, Henry, that's the most I've ever seen you laugh at a movie in so long." It was such a sweet moment.
Sometimes they're babies.
I fell asleep, I think, through the first time through Paddington, because when we watched it the other night, it was all brand new. It was like, wait, Nicole Kidman's in this. She's she's the bad guy. Oh,
spoilers.
I think
some people on this listening to this podcast might not have seen it.
It happens pretty early in the movie, and I apparently fell asleep very early in the movie last time around. But it was a great movie to see it for the first time ever.
I fell asleep this time.
Did you? It's a great little movie, and so there's a new Paddington movie coming out, and it's really great. We also saw a movie the other day. We went to the theater to see Dogman.
It was fantastic. That was the same thing. It was very childish, and like it was like reading a kid's book, which they came from kids' books. And Dave Pilkey, the
I think
creator.
It's
Dav?
I think so.
Regardless, it's very childlike and innocent and wholesome.
So sweet.
And the boys, and we even took one of the boys' friends, and all three of them were like loving it,
glued to
just
the screen,
laughing.
And something I noticed that I really appreciated was the volume was down.
Yeah, I don't think that was intentional for us. Like we weren't trying to go to like a sensory.
Not at all. It was just a regular showing.
But it was just it was like they had speakers.
Loud.
It was like they just had speakers behind the screen. So like all the great big surround sound speakers that are always blasting when you go see a movie, everything was shut off. It was like watching on your TV at home.
It was awesome.
You just had a couple speakers in front, like behind the screen.
So there was like explosions and stuff, and it wasn't booming the seats and making everything right. And I didn't feel overwhelmed or overstimulated.
It was like going to like an old fashioned movie. From when we were kids.
There's a doctor with a visor right now, and he's like a flip chart going, yep, there you go. Overstimulated by sounds, narratives, social stories. Yep.
Uses metaphors for everything.
Yep. Yeah. Needs a sensory issue. She finds her clothes itchy. Throws it away when she gets itchy, but then she gets it. I get in moods sometimes where I buy workout clothes, and it's like, you know what? It feels like somebody sneezed on this shirt, but this is the dry weave stuff.
They're a weird material.
Yoga stuff, like yoga type pants.
So like,
but I get like in a mood where like, you know what, I don't care, I'm wearing yoga stuff, and then I get a whole bunch of outfits, and then it's like, ugh, I can't even. And I go through phases where I want to wear cotton sweaters, and I go through more phases where I want to wear just cotton long sleeve cotton t-shirts. So and we do a lot of like the one you're wearing right now is we made that. That's a custom shirt.
We didn't make the shirt. We designed it.
We didn't make the t-shirt.
Put the design on it.
So we made how would you describe it then? What's a more accurate depiction for you?
Well, I'm just saying we didn't like sew the shirt.
Nobody thought we made shirts. But
you've done that. You have shirts that you've made from scratch. I don't want people thinking that my name's Gildan and we made this.
I did a tank top last year. I also didn't find that in the search deal, and I said I might be in a bin.
It's around somewhere.
Or something. I think I have a bin up there of all the things I made last year because I saw someone on YouTube do a video of all the things I made last year, and I was like, that sounds like a great idea. Put it all in a bin. Shoved it under the bed.
Never saw it again.
It's February already, so. But I did make a tank top from scratch. It was terrible because I don't know how to make necks or sleeves for shirts, but I do know how to make dresses, and I am going to start some more shirts. Good. And some more sewing projects because
it's funny.
I ran out of yarn.
There's a pile of mending requests next to our couch that the boys have some like torn pants or jackets or whatever, and it's like
it's the absolute worst thing. If you want me to do something, don't ask. It's like a guarantee. You might as well say, please don't do this for me if you ask me to do it. But if you I can't explain it. Like, and again, the doctor's going, yep,
there
knew
it is.
That checks. That tracks.
So you were talking about the feel of some of those like workout clothes and yoga clothes.
Yeah.
Years ago when we lived in Maine, I decided one summer that I wanted to run a 5K.
Yeah.
And that sounds like such a lame goal.
Why?
I don't know.
I mean, if you said you were running a 2K, I would say, come on.
I want to run a lap. Yeah. No, but I did. So I had never run anything.
I want to run to the car.
Yeah. I'd never done anything like that before. So I had like this whole, training regimen where it's like over a month and I was going to run a little bit more every day. And we had this great neighborhood where I could run, like there was a great big like loop that I could run. And anyway, I found out very quickly, like Andy Bernard in The Office, that there's nipple chafe is real. Like wearing a shirt like this, like a cotton shirt when you're running and it's hot and sweaty and stuff. I've never had that. It's serious.
I've never had that issue.
So the reason I'm
girls
saying
wear
that,
bras.
Yeah. So there's like some of that material that is terrible. I got a couple of those. I got a couple of shirts. I got a couple of shirts that are made of that, and it's like there's no friction. So I had to wear those when I was.
And it builds up static electricity, which I also cannot stand.
I'm a sweater, so that doesn't affect me.
Oh, really?
So when I'm running, I'm soaked the entire time. So
when I was younger, my family had pretty sensitive skin, so they wouldn't use dryer sheets. It was like the smell. It gave mom a headache, and everybody had like sensitivity to chemicals, and so there was never a dryer sheet in our house. Now, of course, as adults, we found out that there are non-scented, non-chemical dryer sheets that you can use. There's also
probably didn't exist in the 80s and 90s.
I don't know, but there's also dryer balls, which are useless. I've never figured out how to use those. But anyway, back when I was a kid, that was my thing that I found. Again, sensory issues. The wintertime for me at school was miserable. I didn't have ponytail holders. I had long hair, and my clothes was constantly
Wait, why didn't you have ponytail holders?
I don't know. We just didn't have any. Sometimes I'd go to my friend Allison's house, and she would... I remember one year she cut her hair really short, and she gave me all of her scrunchies. And I was like, are you sure you don't want these? And she pulled her hair, and it was like 3 inches away from her head. And she was like, yeah, Vickie, what would I use a scrunchie for? So I had some for a little while, but I just remember static from my most uncomfortable teenage years was... I would have breezed through teenage years if not for static cling. I hated it. Just the winter, the air is so dry, and your skin is so dry, and the static on top of it was like, oh, I hated it. And I know there were days where I was in a bad mood just because I'd lift my shirt and it'd crackle, as you're pulling it away.
You feel like you can't move.
Yeah.
Like you're just stuck in one position.
Yeah, and it hurts when everything is that dry. It hurts when you get a shock, and so like taking your jacket off, getting off the bus was just my day would be ruined. So anyway, sensory issues, but I moving right along from that.
So
but that doctor is out there going, yep.
Yeah, there it is.
That tracks.
You wanted to talk about some self-publishing stuff.
So
this is the self-publishing segment of
and so I've got this book, and it's coming up on this weekend. Is coming up on Valentine's Day is on Friday. Joe's birthday would have been on the 15th. He would have been 12 this year. And so
that's crazy how long that's been.
It's not. I can't even get my head around it. That number doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
So 12 years ago, we lost our middle baby to trisomy 13, and Josh and I. So when I say Josh and I wrote a book, I wrote a book and Josh edited it and wrote a chapter. And so, we wrote it together because there's no way
You're not going to hurt my feelings by saying you wrote a book.
But you did edit, and you read it about 1,000 times, and you wrote a chapter. And we did an audiobook of it, and you did an audio version of your chapter, and we went and did a reading back in October during Self-Publishing Month, and you did the reading, and it was very moving. And somebody said that they were listening to the audiobook, and they cried when they heard your part. And so...
People said they were surprised I could read.
Nope, none of that happened. Can we have a moment here, please?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Good God.
Good God, Lemon.
Good God. So we're coming up on... And that especially rubs me the wrong way, and I have static guard and I have dryer sheets now. So for something to rub me the wrong way at this age is like, it had to be bad. When I let something take up space in my brain, it affects everybody in our house. That means I have less patience with you. It means I have less patience with the boys. I have less patience with the dogs. And so they all deserve to get the best of me. So when I'm discounting myself or selling myself for a bargain price to some asshole who is just, maybe they're having a bad day, but why dump it on me? I'm not a dumping ground. So when I let that go or stay in that space where it's happening, that's a deficit for everybody in my life that I care about. And so it's like, I just love that there's a reminder every single year of like, honey, do you know where you've been? Like, seriously.
Yeah.
So that leads me to, we published a book. We wrote For the Grace of Joe, I think 6 years ago.
I think it was 7.
2018? Oh my God, 7 years ago.
2018.
Yeah. So in 2018, we were 5 years out from the loss, and compiled. I had a blog at the time, so I took a lot of the blog posts, and they had thousands and thousands of views. And you could see the time that people were on there reading those. It was early morning, like very late at night. Same as myself when I was pregnant. People that are just going through pregnancies and getting these diagnoses, and it is hell. It is. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And so, put the blog post together, and then I put other chapters in that kind of piece together the story. And I mean, it took a lot of reworking and putting stuff in order and a lot. And so you read that book, I don't know how many times. I don't know how you did it, because I certainly couldn't have read the same thing over and over. Again, the doctor's going, yep, check mark. I don't know what they're diagnosing me with, but so that book came out in 2018.
Yep.
And we did an ebook and an audiobook of it. And
the audiobook didn't come for a while.
Yeah, we might have done that a couple years ago when we were putting out songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that came afterwards. But I feel like if you're thinking about self-publishing a book, I think there's a whole lot of emotional stuff that goes along with it. Like the questions that kind of come up for people telling their stories like that. And I mean, I have people now, literally right now, coming to me saying, I want to write this story about this thing that happened to me in my life. And they have the same questions that I had 6 years ago, 7 years ago, where it's, is it okay for me to make money from my story? I mean, I don't know that anybody would trade. Like if someone came along and said, I'm going to put you through trauma, but I'm going to give you $1,000. There's not a person that would ever sign up for it. It's not like that. And the other thing is, a book is a piece of art. So if I'm going to write a song about an experience that I've had and I make money from the song, nobody's coming back saying, I can't believe you made money from a breakup. No, but it wouldn't cross anybody's mind. Like they don't really track for sensible,
Yeah, so it's okay to
a reasonable person
tell
test.
your story is what you're saying.
So when I put the book out, I put a whole bunch of personal stuff in there. There's the things that go along with losing a baby there's a lot of marital problems. I mean, I was diagnosed with PTSD shortly after, and I was in therapy, I think, twice a week. So when I got pregnant with Peter, I was in a therapist's office as big as a house twice a week. And then, of course, you got diagnosed with cancer. At the time when we were so we published the book 6 years after we lost Joe, and I don't think I wanted anybody to read it. It was embarrassing. Like people really, it was a raw, I had done a lot of work, and I had discovered things like CBD and and Reiki and meditating, and I did like a mindfulness-based stress reduction program I didn't even make it to most of the classes because it was so hard. But also one of the most beneficial things I've ever done, because it was meditative yoga and things to ground yourself. Like you can sweep the floor and call it a meditation if you're just breathing and thinking about your breath instead of all the 1,000 things that you got going on. So I discovered a lot, and I shared a lot in that story, in that book, and it was so personal. And so at the time, I bought 100 copies. And I felt so guilty and so awkward about selling my book because it was so attached to the story that had happened.
Yeah.
That I felt like it was wrong in some way, that I shouldn't be making money off my dead baby.
So out of those 100 copies, how many do you think you gave away or sold or
90? At least 90 of them. Because I was so uncomfortable with the exchange of money for art. And also because there was all these nagging little thoughts in my head, like, are you really going to make money from this story? And it was like, the story happened. How we treated it and why we wrote the book was because I was up at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning when I couldn't sleep, when I was pregnant with a baby who was destined to not even come out of my belly. I found comfort in people's stories. That's why we wrote the book. And so I'm getting my head around this. And again, the podcast is helping. What we're doing right now is helping. You doing creative stuff in school is helping, because it's showing me that the things that feel good are the things that are right for you. And the things that are feeling bad are like there's something going on when there's like alarm bells going off, like this feels bad, this feels bad. And I'm so used to being hyper vigilant because, I've got sensory issues, I guess, and whatever. And I get triggered. So it's like, it's kind of hard sometimes to figure out, like, is this a triggering experience or is this an actual feedback from my internal guidance system that says this is the wrong situation for you to be in? Like, walk away or get yourself to safety. And sometimes I go down so far down the path that I forget where was I?
So we were talking about For the Grace of Joe, and you bought a whole bunch of books. Yeah.
So I was afraid so I just gave the books away.
Right.
I wasn't comfortable with the exchange of currency for art, because a book is a piece of art.
And I feel like early on there were some couples that got in touch that were dealing with a diagnosis.
Yep.
And it was
from
like,
total strangers.
Obviously, we'll just send you a copy. Like, it wasn't like...
Couldn't possibly ask these doctors in Iowa for $20 for a book.
Right.
Because, this is kindness. This is how I should be expressing kindness. And it's like, and I didn't realize that the kindness was in the book. It was in sharing our story in 3 different formats so people could find it if they needed it. And if this is not on your radar, I'm happy for you. But when it is, there's a reason that people find, like, I know there's algorithms for all this stuff, but I think there's some kind of a law of attraction where you find what you need when you need it. And so I'm revisiting the book. This is a self-publishing thing that because I'm coaching other people to do this exact thing. It's to love your art and to love your work and to trust that if you're called to write a book, it's not the connection to, are you going to make money from this traumatic thing that happened to you? It's like, no, the traumatic thing happened and you're living your life and trying to move on. If you make art from it, people pay for art.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't they?
If you went to a bookstore, you wouldn't say, like, why are you charging for this self-help book? I need it. Like, you know what I mean? You'd be paid for it. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's kind of one of those things that you kind of learn wrong about money in the beginning, is like, you should just give it to me.
I just had a little flash of, this was one of those, like, I think this might be one of those core memories, but when I was like 10, in our neighborhood, there was a guy down the road that had this sweet little miniature pinscher dog. And the guy, I don't know if he was a veteran or not. I always just assumed he was a veteran because he had one leg missing.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't have like a fake leg. He just would he lived by himself. He would use a wheelchair or just get around the best he could. This is a trailer park we lived in. This wasn't like a nice neighborhood. But this guy, one day his dog ran off, and I went around the neighborhood and found the dog. Got the dog back to the guy. It was a sweet dog. It wasn't like it wasn't trying to get away. It was just, wandered off. So he was like, let me get you $5 here. And he's like doing the thing where he's like tapping his...
Doing the Macarena.
...shirt in his pants. I'm going to get you $5. And I just stood there like a 10-year-old kid would when you said, let me give you $5. And it feels like 30 minutes later, here it is, and gives me $5. And, it was just like, I'm standing there going, okay, give me some money. But then when I got home, my mom was like, why did you take his money? Why didn't you just do the thing? Which is understandable that it's like... Did you
ask for money?
I didn't ask for money.
Was there a reward poster for the money? Were you looking for the dog thinking, this is going to get me at least 5 big ones?
Can you help me find my dog as I was walking past his house sort of thing?
And he was expressing his gratitude with currency.
Exactly. So I feel like whenever I do a thing, even now when it's editing a video or making a poster or something, and it's like, this is whatever, $500. And it's like, I feel like that kid just waiting going, and then somebody's behind me going, why are you asking for money? Like, I made a thing.
Isn't that funny? That's a core memory. So, question, did your mom walk you back to that guy's house and make you give back the $5?
Oh, no.
Really?
No. No, I'm pretty sure it was just like, why'd you do that?
She just made you feel bad for it.
I just felt bad for you.
Okay. That's messed up. Like, I love you, but that's messed up. Like, so you just carry around that guilt and the $5. And so do you enjoy spending that $5? Like, do you get to enjoy that money?
I don't remember anything past that regarding that $5. Yeah. All I remember is the getting it and the feeling bad for it afterwards.
I heard a story a few years ago where somebody was making like really I want to say romantic birdhouses, but it was
romantic birdhouse mailboxes.
But it was garbage bins, like wooden garbage bins that you could put at the end of your driveway, and they were like custom numbers to put on there. And so someone was related to us, and they were making these garbage bins, and they were selling them for like $120.
They're nice. Like they're
gorgeous.
because they're functional. Like they had lids that you'd open up and you put your garbage.
And it's
in.
for keeping rats out. So if you're picking up your garbage a lot because the rats have torn, or the seagulls have torn it apart, like having one of these bins is a nice investment. It looks nice at the end of your driveway. If you own a house, I'm sure you you care about what your driveway looks like. Mm-hmm. So I just remember someone bought a garbage bin from this family member who was making them for $120. I mean, when you think about the labor that goes into it and
that's
the lumber,
not much.
But I just remember this relative bought from this other relative, and we're like, oh, I can't wait to get one of these garbage bins. And then when they went and picked it up, the story that I heard when the person got home with the garbage bin was, can you believe he charged me $120 for it? Why didn't you give him $150?
We've come across that
relative.
A lot.
Like, this is your family member who's doing this to make money.
Wouldn't you want your family member to have more money?
Yep. There's a clip in Schitt's Creek that we really love about that. Like when
they're fighting over the family and friends discount.
Yeah,
and David's like, why would you want to give me less money? You're my dad.
Even this conversation right now feels like uncomfortable, because it's like, oh God, are we asking for money or begging for money? Like,
I think we're trying to convince ourselves that it's okay to accept money for things that we are making, that we love, that we create, and we use our abilities and our creative experience.
And I feel like bartering is a good compromise. So like if there's something we can do for somebody, we have a set of skills, they have a set of skills, that works out for me.
Yep.
But I feel like there's still like that catch of, I don't know, should we? So all that to say, I'm revisiting the book, and I've read a lot of stuff about this, the language right now is manifesting and the law of attraction and all that stuff. And I don't mean to roll my eyes at it. It's good stuff. Like there really seems to be something to it. So one of the things I read, because I have all the self-help books on my shelf, it was about revisiting things that you've done in the past. Like, so one of the tips for how do I sell my book is to start writing another one, which I did start, by the way. I have another book started, and I'm very excited about it. But one of the things is I have this book that I wrote 7 years ago. It didn't sell a lot of copies. Now, it is in the top 100 on Amazon, which is great. But that came from, it wasn't like that for the first 5 years. It was when I started doing the self-publishing stuff last year, and I went out and did a whole bunch of signings, and we did homemade banners to put up next to the table and all that. When I actually started paying attention to it, because what you focus on appreciates, and what you appreciate you focus on. When we paid attention to my first book, there were more copies sold, and there was reviews left, and there was people coming out to the signings, and it reinvigorated. And so one of the things that I'm doing this week is to revisit that book, because Joe's birthday is coming up this weekend, and it is it's a little touchstone for me to say this was a real thing that happened, and there is a thing that I've already done that has value that I am not sharing with people. And one of these stories that I heard from the self-help books was about this guy. He was selling coffee. He had a little coffee shop. He had traveled all over the world, and he loved coffee. And he found these beans that he just loved, and he was getting them imported from wherever. And he said, this is the best coffee. But how do I make my business grow? I don't want to ask people for money. I don't want to be greedy and all that stuff. And so the question to him was, why did you start selling coffee? And his answer was, because I want people to have the joy that I have with this wonderful tasting coffee. And she said, is this the best coffee? Do you make the best coffee ever? And he went, yeah. And she said, so if you're not telling people about it, it's a disservice. If you're not
somebody out there wants the best coffee ever.
Somebody's manifesting what you have or what you make. And if you're not putting it out there, like available where somebody can find you, it's a disservice.
Yep.
So am I saying that not putting my book out there is a disservice to people that are going through pregnancy diagnoses? I remember sitting in a waiting room when I was pregnant with Peter. And I remember sitting with, watching this family across the waiting room. It was a woman and her mom, and the woman was very, very pregnant. And I know, like, I had been in that seat, like that literal seat where she was, where I went back, had an ultrasound, found out that my baby was dying, and they bring you out through the back door. She didn't come back out through the main door.
Yeah, you don't want an ultrasound customer going out through the waiting room crying when there's people waiting.
Right. Because it's a room of hope and it's a room of whatever. And I just remember I knew what happened to that family because I saw them out at the elevator crying. after. Like, I knew they got shuttled out, or what do you call it? Shuffled.
Yeah.
Ushered out the back door.
Yeah.
They had just gotten a diagnosis. And I remember there's a story in the book as well from that exact same, because it was like maternal fetal medicine. It was for high risk pregnancies, because at that point I had had a loss and I was over 33 or 34 at the time. I might have been over 35. Anyway, I'm not doing math right now. But there was this thing that happened in the waiting room where these two ladies were there. I guess they were there for gynecological problems. They were at that stage in their life. And they were, we were at the vagina doctor. And these two old ladies were talking, and they were talking very loud and using, slurs for developmental delays.
Wow.
And so sitting right next to me is this other family with a little girl with Down syndrome.
Wow.
It was like, I guess you were in the car with Henry at the time, and I was just sitting there going, are you hearing this? Like, and so I'm mouthing to the family with the kid with Down syndrome, like, I'm so sorry for how they're acting. I don't even remember how the story ends. I'd have to go back to the book, because I remember that room where these major events are happening, and it felt like you feel like nobody understands. Yeah. You feel like I'm the only person this has ever happened to, and you just feel like you're this island of grief and despair, and nobody understands, and you're seeing all these healthy babies, and you're seeing all these insensitive people that are, this woman was sitting there with this healthy child who happened to have Down syndrome and was made to feel like garbage because of this asshole sitting next to us who was using slurs. Like, those injustices, that's why we wrote the book. That's why I wrote a book about a baby that the doctors said we could save him. We're not going to. I'm going to recommend to the only pediatric cardiologist in Maine to not operate on your baby. Like, that happened in a room where you were in the car with a teething toddler. So I'm in the room by myself with this doctor, and he's like doing an ultrasound on me, and he's got the palm of his hand rested on my pelvic bone. I'm not an ultrasound technician, but you don't need to leave your hand on a woman's pelvic bone while you're doing an ultrasound, especially when you're saying, I'm not going to help you save your baby.
So reading something like that for a young mother that's going through the same thing,
I don't know. I don't know if I'm just getting a diagnosis, would I want to read somebody else's story where the baby doesn't survive? Who exactly is the market for that? I don't know, because I don't have a happy ending. There was a senator in the U.S.
It's a hopeful ending.
It's a survival. It's a journey of survival, and it's how we got through when it seemed like the next minute was too much. So there were moments where I would put a picture of Henry on the dashboard so that I didn't drive onto oncoming traffic or into a cliff when we were in Maine. And there was a while where I just stopped driving. It was that bad. And I just remember going to a grief support group, and there was a woman who had been there. She came back to see the group because she, I guess, got some support from when she first lost her baby. She was 10 years out. She had a little 4 or 5 year old at the time. And she was talking about how her loss was 10 years ago. It was still fresh, and the anniversary was really hard. And we're sitting there we still got we're still having discharge because our babies are that freshly dead. All these women sitting around, and we all had different stories at that table of different diagnoses. Some of us had the exact same diagnosis, and it was brutal. But we didn't, there were so many of us that were comparing stories and going, yeah, I think about killing myself every single day. And here's this woman 10 years out who went, yeah, the first 3, 4, 5 years, I thought about killing myself every day. And then it started to get better. And it was like her advice of, I tried meditation. I tried mindfulness-based stress reduction. I tried yoga. I tried medication. I tried weed. I tried cannabis. I tried CBD oil. I tried Reiki. Like, hearing that woman's story when I was so fresh on that loss. And again, I couldn't bring you to these group sessions because you were home with our other baby. So I'm sitting in this room completely alone. There were times that I had to pull over on the way home and call you and say, I don't think I can make the rest of the way home. So I think revisiting that stuff, I don't mean to, I'm in my brain right now going, oh, you just made this such a negative, such a sad podcast. But this is who we are. And this is why we're doing our podcast, because we're sharing who we are. And in getting to know us, maybe people trust us to help them with their books or to talk about the book that they want to write. Maybe you don't need help. Maybe you just want to talk about it. Exactly. Yeah. And so right now, what I'm going through right now is we're coming up on the anniversary. And it's a touchstone of how much bullshit are you letting into your life? Like, what did your priorities slip again? Because during that first few years, I didn't participate in bull whatsoever.
Yeah.
I was focused on Henry, and then when Peter came along, I was focused on being a mom and just getting through every day. And then it got a little bit better and a little bit better, and then all of a sudden you're like back in these situations where it's like, are you really stressed about a bill or like someone that doesn't like you or someone that might be mad at you? Like, are you seriously wasting your time on this kind of garbage when
baloney.
Like you have babies who are healthy and alive?
Yeah.
And it's just, anyway, so I'm revisiting the self-publishing thing. So I sat down with my marketing education and wrote down all the places that you can buy our book. So it's at like in the bookstores, and it's on our website, and it's on Amazon, and it's in 3 different formats. And then in another column, I wrote down all the social media channels that we have. So TikTok, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook. And I mean, there's like 12 different outlets. YouTube, we have a YouTube, we have other YouTube channels in addition to the one that you watch Are You Mad at Me on. And like, so you piece those together, and it's like, look at all these opportunities. And it's like, so, okay, what are you going to put on there? And so it's either like you either put direct messages about your story, about what's in the book, about quotes that, you know, you find particularly important, or maybe it's about just self-publishing in general.
Yeah, telling your
story. So I'm still trying to figure out how to reconcile the fact that I have a book about a baby who died, and I went through PTSD and postpartum depression, and then had a rainbow baby in the middle of that. And then there's this other book that I wrote about. I made a bunch of documentaries, and people didn't pay me. And cameras fell down, and people didn't show up. And every time I try to do a project, I try to ask Alan Dewall to do it, and he always says no. But one of these days he might. How do you reconcile those two books came from the same person?
Yeah.
And so I sat down. I'm going to give away a little thing here, but I sat down with ChatGPT, and I said, like, you can ask ChatGPT anything. It's like a best friend at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, how do I approach marketing and promotion for these two books that seem to have come from two different people?
Yeah.
And the advice from artificial intelligence was, maybe it's your journey. Maybe it's not about one particular book. Maybe it's about, these are in the self-publishing journey. These are parts of you along the way. Like the album that we put out is also a snapshot of it's a part of the journey. And it's not necessarily about, I'm this one book or this next book or the book after that. It's through self-publishing. Like the first time we wrote the book, I changed everybody's names. And then when we put the audiobook out, I changed all the names back to the real names so that the people who deserved to be thanked got thanked, and the people who weren't very nice, their names are like, so you can't ever say, well, this doctor's never had anything bad said about him.
Right.
That's not true. It's in Vickie Morgan's book. She says his name right out and says where he works because it was, inappropriate behavior or ableist or refusing treatment because of insurance issues, whatever. Like there were things that have happened along the way that, is it going to help anybody? I don't know who it would help. I don't know who would want to read it.
You started with helping yourself, and then it goes out from there.
And I think that's where I got stuck. Like, okay, so this helped me. It helped to write it, but I couldn't possibly ask people to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so I have a whole comedy set about it. I wrote a song about it, like called World's Worst Seller, and it's on my TikTok channel. And I think we're going to put it on the next album. I don't know. But, well, I lost my train of thought. This is how PTSD affects me. I lose my train of thought, and then it's like it takes me a minute.
Basically, it's okay to tell your story.
So I've been afraid to do TV shows because what if I lose track of my train of thought in the middle of a TV show during a taping? And I got to tell you, it's happened many times, and it's fine. People are very understanding, and what takes maybe 3 seconds for me to get back on track is not that long. So where was I?
You were talking about you wrote the book for yourself, and
I got stuck on it being for me. And so it was like, okay, so I wrote it. I couldn't possibly sell it because I don't know. And it's like, wait a second. When I think about that person that I was away from home, we were so far from our families, and there were people who had such terrible reactions. I mean, but they didn't know they were having terrible reactions because we had never been through this before. Right. So when they sent flowers, after the baby died and said, you'd be such a great mom. It was like, dude, I have a kid. I am a mom. And I didn't want to I hate flowers on the best days, but I didn't want to get flowers after our baby died.
Yeah.
But like, if you don't know, so who do I send that to? Do I send that out to the relatives who might send flowers to people who've lost a baby? Is it for nurses who are going through, who are helping people with these, like who are giving these, is it for doctors who are giving the diagnosis? Is it for med students? Is it for psychology students who are learning to do grief counseling? Is it for grief counseling groups? I have no idea. But going back to that book and loving the person I was when I wrote it and honoring that story, I saw something in Yellowstone with the wonderful Kevin Costner. I know he didn't write the line, but he said, I think trauma happens to people so that we can tell the next generation how we survived it. And that hopefully one of these days there will be no more trauma. So, I mean, if you think you can't get stuff from TV or Kevin Costner, there you go. That's the little nugget that I got from it. But it was like, it's funny that when you need to hear that, it shows up in a TV show, or it shows up in a TikTok video, or it shows up in an Instagram. And it's like, I got an ad the other day and it said, you're 47 years old and you have kids and you want to leave something to them. I was like, okay, come on. I feel that's a little invasive.
It's a bit early.
Instagram. But it was a great big 47. And it had all these like, you have kids and you want to leave them something. Like, wow, that's targeted ads. But if there's targeted ads for that, I don't know what the next step is, but I know starting off with this is what I would do for someone with a marketing who came to me for marketing advice. I would write down your assets. What do you have to sell?
Yep.
I would write down what are the possible channels where you could sell.
Right.
And then the next part is, what's your message? Who are your people that you want to reach? Where are they? Where do they hang out? Yep. So if I'm doing an event and I put it on Facebook, if my demographic is over 35, between 35 and 65, Facebook's perfect. But if I want people under 35, Instagram is my market. And if I want people who are younger than 24, I'm going on TikTok. So I have this marketing knowledge, but applying it for other people is so much easier than for myself.
Right.
So I'm revisiting, because if I'm going to coach other people in self-publishing, I need to be able to look them in the eye and go, you got to love your work. Yep. And if you wrote it 6-7 years ago, you can relaunch your book every year. You can do an anniversary. You can do a relaunch. You can do a birthday of your book. You can do, it's a special because it's a special event. Like Mother's Day is coming up. Last year we did a Mother's Loss event for mothers where it was just desserts. It was music and just desserts.
That was really nice.
It was really fun. And it was sad, but it was like we were in a room full of people who understood. And so when you've had a loss, you never forget. Yeah. So I can clear that up if you're wondering about this at all. And this might not be the podcast for you to be listening to. If you're this far into it, something resonated with you and that's why you're here. If you've had a loss and you are like, if you have a friend who's had a loss and you say, I don't want to mention the baby's name because maybe she's not thinking about it. Definitely not. Mention the baby's name. That mom never forgets. And when you mention their names, it means so much. When you have living, healthy children, everybody knows what's going on. There's pictures of them and you're celebrating these milestones and all these things, but you don't get to celebrate the milestones with the babies who you don't get to keep. So mention their names, and don't be afraid. It's okay to ask. It's okay to ask questions because you don't get a whole lot of questions about that stuff. And I just lost my train of thought again.
That's okay.
It's this week. I usually keep the week free, with nothing. I try to keep that week free just in case I have a meltdown or can't function, and made the mistake this year. I've got a songwriter circle coming up on Wednesday, but I've got that coming up, and I also on the 16th I have another open mic for young people. But when I go out for Mother's Day, and this is jumping ahead, but when I go out on Mother's Day and there's like all these cards and all these things celebrating moms, it's a big deal. Like, yes, I have living children. I also have one that there's no card for it. You don't get to celebrate. You don't get to talk about it because it makes people uncomfortable. And even now, it's like, are people going to be okay hearing this? It's uncomfortable. And people are like, I'd rather not hear about it. Especially friends that I know who are pregnant. And this happens a lot. People are great with us until they get pregnant. And then it's like, they just drop off the planet. Yeah. They don't want to talk to us about their baby. I don't really want to hear about their babies, if I'm being honest, because it's still very hard to see people who...
That's fair.
When you've been down the road, it's so hard to see people who just get pregnant so magically and there's no issues. And it's like, I wish you all the best. I hope you never understand where I'm coming from. Yeah. But that doesn't change my experience. And it's very, it's hard. So again, the next step for the marketing plan or promotion would be, what is the messaging? What do I want to share about the book? Who would it benefit and who would want to read it? Yeah. Because the first initial group of people were people that I gave the book to.
Right.
And there were people that I gave it to that have said, I couldn't read it. I couldn't get through it. It was too sad. Or I had one lady when I was writing the book, I was excited about the book because it was the next step for me. It's not everybody gets to that, I guess, and maybe some people just deal with it in different ways. But if you get to a point where you want to share it, I was excited. I was excited to be able to get it out and think that I was going to help people the way I had been helped. And I just remember this lady standing in my kitchen in New Brunswick, and I said, I'm writing a book about my loss. And she goes, and I was like, would you read that? And she goes, not if it was all about a dead baby. I mean, if you put other stuff in there, but I wouldn't want to read a whole book about a dead baby. Yeah.
There'll be a joke section.
We were working on a comedy play at the time. So there's different sides to people, and I think that's something I'm trying to put together too, because these pieces all make up the mosaic. So I think at this point in our lives, we just say, yeah, there's a week in February where Vickie's kind of out of it a little bit, and she might go off on a tangent about, and that's okay, because the right people will find it.
That's right.
And just like listening to that episode of Nateland the other day, you can skip over it. If it's a particularly, don't like the guest or whatever that's on there, you can skip over it. And hopefully they're not saying any inside jokes that you need to pick up on. And sometimes you can go back and rewind and stuff. But I think if I have any more of these somber, raw speeches, I'll make sure not to put any inside jokes in there that we're going to need for the next podcast. But I am working. So self-publishing, if I went through a traditional publisher with my book,
it'd be a different process.
Well, I can tell you that I brought it to the Down Home shop here in Newfoundland, which is intended for Newfoundland things. And I was born and raised in Newfoundland. I spent the first 30 years of my life here, and happened to move away and lost our baby in Maine. And when I came back, wrote the book. It was on CBC. They came and did an article on that.
Yep.
And brought it to the Down Home shop to see if they wanted to buy it or wanted to put it in the shop to sell. And they looked through it.
They skimmed it.
Handed it back to me after about 2 weeks of waiting. And they said, it's not Newfoundland enough.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. I think looking back, they probably should have just come out and said, it's a bit sad. I mean, putting it next to the salt and pepper shakers that look like jelly bean houses and the what do you call it? Trifling, what do you call it? The trinkets, the garbage that they have at the Down Home shop that they can stuff right up their tartan asses. They didn't want my book. Now, they probably like my new one because it's got pictures of Alan Doyle on the front and Ron Hines. Again, self-publishing. You have control over where you sell it.
That's
and
right.
You have control over your story. And if you need to change a part or you want to put an updated, an extra chapter at the end because, it's 10 years later and you want to put people republish books all the time.
Yeah.
When you have a publisher, you don't have those options. So I'm a big proponent of self-publishing, and I'm still learning the benefits of it. And the second book, way easier to sell the second book because it's funny. There's a lot of funny stuff in there, and it's like lighthearted, and it's in Comic Sans font.
So you're saying you feel more comfortable selling the second book
because it's funny and it's not too personal, and it's like it's just goofy, funny, and that's what I always wanted to write. But the first book that came out wasn't funny. There was funny parts in it for sure, but it wasn't a humorous book. It was meant to be a helpful mental health journey book where to let people know. It gets better.
And what did you say about the two books? The first one was serious with some funny parts, and the second one was funny with some serious parts.
Yeah. And so I'm still working out the stuff. Like I'm still revisiting the how to turn that into when I paid attention to it back in last year in October when we were doing all the signings, within a few weeks it was on Amazon. It went to the top 100.
Yeah.
With just a little bit of attention. And that wasn't with any ads. That was just,
focusing on it.
It was focusing your energy on something.
Right.
And then the other book came out, and it was like number one in musician autobiographies. I mean, it was like, it's up there with like Johnny Cash and,
Merle Haggard or something.
Yeah, that was great, but it was funny. It was a folk musician biography, but it was about a lot of film stories and stuff. But there was a lot of music stories in there too, and that one just that one went so well because I wasn't afraid of people reading it.
Yeah,
and so it's just really funny because I don't know how many people I cringe to think about. Could that have helped people over the last 12 years? That I. What's that? The word disabuse. I'm going to disabuse you of that notion that telling your story is somehow greedy or opportunistic or, sweet, adorable Jesus. does anyone think we signed up to lose a baby just so we could get a book out of it? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But like when you think of the stuff that goes on, like these conferences that are built around, like I know there was a training for nurses. They had a conference here in Newfoundland, and I was invited to speak, and that was after the CBC article. And I was like, yeah, I wanted to do that stuff. And then it just became so disappointing that it didn't happen in spite of me is really what it comes down to. I didn't share it. I didn't tell people about it. I was actually hoping no one would find it. So I probably, didn't really put it in bookstores. It's only been in a bookstore since last year.
Right.
Both of them went in at the same time, thanks to Coles and Indigo and Chapters, who love my books.
Yeah.
Got my first check from Indigo.
That's great.
A while back, because they're selling them for me, and I just, it's just happening on its own. And remember that story from the lady. I was out for coffee with somebody, and there was a lady sitting next to us, right, overhearing what we were saying, and she had that story about how there was a crow named Joe and a cat named Grace, and it was like, good Lord. So the book is available. Like, there's 9 different places you can buy the book, and in all 3 formats, both books. So the podcast, again, coming back to self-publishing, if that's why you're here and you're interested in learning about self-publishing, a podcast is an absolutely fantastic way for people to get to know you. And I think we're sharing week to week. We're sharing so I don't post much on Facebook anymore because, like, if you want to know what was going on in my life, it's in the podcast.
It's on the podcast.
Yeah. So it's in there. So somebody saying, oh, I didn't know your car broke down. I mean, you'd know if you listen to the podcast.
And this is a dozen episodes.
And your friends don't need to listen to your podcast. Your friends don't need to buy your books.
Yep.
There are strangers on this big blue marble that are just dying to hear your story.
Yep.
So I've have this on my plate right now that there are people who are looking for consultations and coaching on publishing and writing their story and getting the first draft of the story down. I need to practice what I preach.
Yeah.
It needs to be okay to tell your story. And I see the value in other people's stories. I know that if you've lost a relative to this thing, or you've been through this sort of experience or whatever, someone else has been too. And there's way more than one. But if you help one person, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. Again, I'm coming back to this. My brain is going, yeah, but you shouldn't make money from it. Making money. Come on. Give me a break. The hours, if you broke it down to like an hourly wage for the hours that go into writing a book.
Yeah, it wouldn't be much.
You'll never break even. But people don't count that. They don't count that as work, and they don't count artistic stuff. If it felt good to do it, and if you're vulnerable in some way, somehow it's like a dirty thing to get paid for your art. But that's just not people. There are artists who support themselves with art. Yep. I don't know. I know there's lean times.
That's the ideal, though.
I think some people are just built that way. I think some people are just not built for, whether they, look, you're going to need a PTSD diagnosis to never have to work at Walmart again. Maybe that's how life takes care of you, because if you're not suited for that stuff, how many times can you get fired before you go, you know what? I might have too much personality for retail.
Too much personality.
There was on Nateland. I'm going to go back because I love Nate Bargatze and I love what he does for their podcast is super lighthearted and it's really funny and all that stuff. But he has these moments of these little nuggets of wisdom that are oh, I'm going to incorporate that into my life. But there was a guy saying, Graham Kay is actually Canadian. And he was talking about how he would go do server jobs or retail jobs and he would get fired every 6 months. I'm how did you manage to stay for 6 months? Yeah. But that's
a good run.
But I mean, he's a successful comedian and he's doing what he's really good at.
Yeah.
But if you go back and find that guy from 10, 15 years ago when he's getting fired from a retail job and fired from a waiter job and fired from whatever, that guy feels like he's worthless.
Yeah.
And he has nothing to contribute. And that's not, and there are people who thrive in that environment who just, that's awesome for you. But there's other people who are not. It's not that they're better. It's just their brains don't work that way. Yep. And maybe they function at 3:00 in the morning a little better than they do at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And, there's and I feel like the mental health benefits of creative work, it just outweighs any of the other stuff. And so I'm still learning to love myself and accept myself as an artist, because I wasn't for a long, long time. I didn't identify as an artist.
Yeah.
And well, you're also doing this, and you do comedy, and you do music, and whatever. So you can't really call yourself any of those things professionally. But who's saying that?
You're multidisciplinary. That's all.
But who's saying that to me?
Just you.
I'm in the room right now. I'm the one saying it. right? Like you're your own worst critic. And so
make your art, do the thing.
And so if I can be of service to other people in that way, to be the coach that they call on a Friday afternoon and be accountable to me and say, because I'm going to ask you the questions, I'm going to put it to you and say, why doesn't your story matter? Why do you think it's not okay to make $5 off a book? Because it was a hard story. And I know that there's value for other people. I know that for everybody else. And that's always the, doctor, heal thyself, right? It's, learning how to turn that mirror around and say, okay, I can do this for other people.
So this is episode 12 of Are You Mad at Me? I think we're going to call this one Metaphors.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll work on it.
Call whatever you want. But again, I'm going to recommend going to Nateland podcast. If you need something to just relax and have like really lighthearted humor.
After you watch this.
Sure. Well, they're at the end of this episode if they're hearing this. But the specials, turn on the specials. I mean, it's just so nice and so funny. And just his delivery and the Southern accent. And he's got a new book coming out. Very excited about that. It's called Big Dumb Eyes. I don't know what is. I feel like I know all the stories already, but there's probably more. I can't wait. And he doesn't even like books. Can you imagine what that book's going to be like?
So many words.
You can also go on Waze, and he's one of the voice commands that will give you directions, so that's pretty fun too. I love him. He's just, anyway, one step closer to Tennessee and going down and seeing all the crew on the Nateland podcast, because they do shows down in, they did 2 years ago.
Yeah, we haven't caught up to that.
I wonder if they're still doing it.
Zany's is closed.
No. But they do like the lab. They do the lab at Zany's. They do like a bunch of comedians. And there's a whole bunch coming up through that are just absolutely hilarious. There's a lady named Leanne Morgan who is a grandmother. And I've been watching a lot of her stuff. She's been showing up in my feed
she's
a lot.
funny. Her accent kills me.
But she came to comedy very, very late, and a lot of people told her she couldn't do it because she was too old and she was a grandmother and the stuff she was joking about. But she said she had years and years of experience of selling Tupperware. And those the pyramid, multi-level marketing things. She would go in selling stuff to other housewives, and she said she would be telling jokes to get them to buy stuff. And that's how she honed her craft. So by the time she started doing stand-up in front of audiences, she had years of experience. And so now she's doing her own sitcom. She was in a movie that we just watched called You're Cordially
Invited, yeah.
But she's got her own sitcom coming out. So excited. And, Leanne Morgan, maybe we're related somehow. Are you related? You got any
I don't know that I have
Tennessee?
any relatives in Tennessee on that side of the family, but...
You do, though. You have relatives from the other side of the family.
Other side of the family,
so how far away is it possibly? Anyway, Leanne Morgan's on the list. Dusty Slay also on the list. I'm really enjoying social media for the comedians, and your feed changes a whole lot.
If you get the algorithm working for you and get a positive, fun feed, then it's nice.
It's really nice. It can be really fun, then there's a lot of stuff out there, and so I'm going to explore Pinterest a little bit. So if anyone has advice on how to what to put on Pinterest, I'm thrilled. Like, I'd be thrilled to hear it because I don't have a freaking clue. And sorry for all the swear words in this one, but
the team's gonna have a lot of work editing.
You're gonna leave all the swear words in?
I'm leaving all the swear words in. I don't even care.
So we had our second open mic, and
it was really good.
Yeah. We're looking forward to doing more of those. And we got a songwriter circle coming up on... So the day this comes out, that evening, we have a songwriter circle with my buddy Jared Waterman. And we got Larry Brezel and Randy Crane who do... they do like storytelling kind of combos. And they got a bunch of songs between them. So they're going to be out with us on Wednesday.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
And the week after that, if you're the type to plan ahead, we've got Gary Smith and Zelia.
2 weeks after that.
2 weeks after that, yep. So there's lots of stuff. So this weekend, so Valentine's Day and Saturday, I'm going to turn my phone off. I will be unavailable for those days, and I'm going to spend time. We try to mark Joe's birthday by doing things that we might not have got to do if he had survived. I know that sounds really dark, but he had so many health problems, and so we celebrate his life by doing something together as a family. We usually make a cake. And celebrate and love each other, because I think that's what he would have wanted. That's what I would have wanted for him. And so every now and then I feel like my uncle was sitting next to me today, I thought, and every now and then I feel like there's someone that puts an arm around my shoulders and says, Mom, this is bullshit. Tell that lady to go take a long walk on a short pier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm grateful for that, because I do feel like all the meditation and all that stuff, I feel like it has kind of connected me a little bit more with the things that help you cope. I don't know if any of it's real, but I do know that stuff shows up when you need it. As long as it's helping you cope. Yeah. I mean, unless you're skipping, like if you're all over the edge a little bit and you're like, plotting demises of, state officials or whatever.
Not too far, yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit far. But I think as long as it gives you comfort, whether it's in religion or gambling or booze or self-publishing, whatever you're into, man, if it makes you feel better, if it gets you through, give that some love.
Yeah. So that's it for this week.
Yeah.
This was good.
Thank you.
Good podcast.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for doing this every week. I look forward to it.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. And any feedback, let us know what's going on in your lives. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks, as always, for listening, because this is really fun.
Yeah. And don't forget to follow along on Facebook and Instagram. And we're on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts, depending on what all your friends listen to, and you can share it with them. Share the links.
And the website is selfpublishednl.com if you want to go check that out. And pick up a crochet needle, pick up a pen and a piece of paper. Do something.
Make some art.
Write it down. There's lots more room on the outside than on the inside.
Do the thing.
Do the thing, man. You wouldn't believe the benefits of. It's smaller when you let it out. And so especially if you can find somebody like Josh Morgan to talk to, you're golden, because he is friggin' awesome. And I got to tell you,
I think you're pretty awesome.
When we had Henry, 36 hours of labor, I remember the doctor looked over and we're holding our little baby and he's like all red and wrinkly and screaming. And the doctor looked over and he said, you guys should teach classes on how to be supportive in the delivery room, because
we're a good team.
Josh was by my side every single second. I don't know how you didn't starve to death, but he was so good. And through all 3 pregnancies, all 3 deliveries, he was absolutely amazing. And glad you're here.
I'm glad you're here.
All right, I'm Vickie Morgan.
I'm Josh Morgan.
Are You Mad at Me?
We'll see you next week.